What this is Democrats using what little leverage we have, because they need 7 Democratic votes in the Senate, to basically say, hey, if you want our votes, then you gotta allow us to extend these ACA subsidies. And we're not asking for anything new. We're not asking for millions more than we had before. This is to keep in place existing subsidies so that 24 million Americans don't pay as much as 3 times higher for health insurance next year in 2026. It's a very simple concept to understand. And by the way, this is helping not just Americans who live in blue states, but Americans who live in red states too. And in fact, the 5 states that have adopted ACA enrollment in the last 5 years skew overwhelmingly Republican. We're talking West Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, as opposed to the blue states who've largely seen smaller adoption of ACA enrollments in the last few years.
I think I'm not pushing back on any of that because I'm using a lot of the same numbers. The question is that tactically, should the Democrats give completely on any funding that is used or misused to finance health services for people who are here illegally and take that issue off the table? Give it to the Republicans and say, what do you want? You voted for the reimbursements for these services at the state level also. What do you want to do with people who aren't here legally? Go ahead and tell us. Why don't you just give it to them and focus on the other part?
Because it doesn't, well, first of all, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at the federal level, and these are federal legislators, and so it's up to them to dictate what happens with regard to federal policy, but not a dime of federal funding goes to ACA subsidies. And I know that these Republicans are trying their level best to try and convince people that that's the truth, but it doesn't happen. As far as the states are concerned, we have Republicans now trying to dictate what happens at the state level from Washington, D.C. These are these states' rights Republicans. I mean, you don't get to dictate from Washington, D.C. what happens in the states. And for me on the left to be telling these states' rights crusaders that that's how it's got to be, it just seems so backwards. I mean, the reality is what New York wants to do with state level funding is up to New York. And by the way, it's so bizarre for these Republicans to be dictating what New York can do when you have these blue states like New York, like New Jersey, like California, that are donor states that make sure that all of the other states have funding for their own budgets, plenty of which stuff they don't agree with, as far as their agenda is concerned, but they're still donor states. They still make sure to fund red states' governments. And now these Republicans in Washington, D.C. want to be able to dictate what those blue states can do with their state level funding. I mean, where does it end?
I think it's a good argument. I think it is clever, but not complete, because you are right. No direct funding under federal law can go to people who are not legally here for these types of services. You can argue if that's good or bad, but that's the law. I'm talking about the reimbursements. And like California has called out for this, and with good reason. It is a funny money game that they do a couple of different ways, and other states do it too, just not as egregiously. The reimbursements wind up being the functional effect of getting federal money because they get paid back by the federal government for monies that they spend on the state level for taking care of people who aren't here legally and who they say, oh no, it's just people who are here lawfully, but not just citizens. That's kind of a game, though, right? This is why I say it's not complete. They get the reimbursements, that's federal money. And asylees, 90% of them are not going to have their cases approved. So, yeah, they're lawful, assuming they show up for their hearings and then lose their case, and now they're not lawful. Why not give on that?
Well, look, the goalpost can always move as far as these Republicans are concerned. At first, they were saying that no federal funding for undocumented immigrants. Okay, there is no funding for undocumented
Brian, just
immigrants.
Say yes.
And,
say yes.
And
say I give on that.
Well, I mean, but it's not up to the federal government to dictate what states can do at the state level. That's how it works in this country. We have a 10th Amendment to the Constitution.
Reimbursement rates are the federal level. What is lawful and not lawful, including asylees in that, is federal. Why don't you give on those two?
It's up to the states to be able to dictate what they want to do at the state level. If Republicans want to implement policy at the state level, they should run and win at the state level. If Republicans want to take over California, then they should do that.
No, they shouldn't do that. First of all, what are you, nuts? We don't want any more incursion of federal on state than we already have. Thank you very little. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.